Good morning, students. Welcome to module 37 in the supply chain management. So today we are going to enter the unit 5, right? So that is the role of IT, right? So information technology in the supply chain management, right? So the information is a crucial to performance a supply chain because it provides the basics on which the supply chain managers make the decisions. Information technology consists of the tools used in to gain the awareness about the information and analyze the information and execute the information to increase the performance of the supply chain, right? So it is the one of the driver, right? It is the one of the driver in the supply chain management. So last class we have seen, so due to the information distortion, we we are in trouble, right? So for the lack of the coordination in the supply chain. So due to the lack of coordination, what will happen? The profitability will be decreases, right? The profitability will be decreases in the supply chain. So it is a very negative impact on the supply chain or any businessman, right? It has a very negative impact, right? So we have to survey in the market, right? So uh, here today is a competitive world, so the information has to develop ourselves for the good supply chain network coordination, right? So the information technology is a very important one for the supply chain management, right? So you may think about the information technology revolution changed the world's and in all aspects of the business processes, right? So the development in the supply chain network, right? The development in the information technology, right? So has a result in many possible alternative solutions for the supply chain management will runs in an effective manner, right? So if the technology will be increases nowadays, right? So due to the technology, so we are getting the product in a easy manner, right? So we are getting the product means the supply chain stages, right? Each supply chain stages will get benefit on that particular technology. So far, due to the technology advancement, so the customers also gets beneficial term in the term of the supply chain management, right? So why the information technology is needed in the supply chain network, right? So in the supply chain management is the information driven function, right? So in the supply chain management, the information is a driven function, right? So the information technology enabled in a supply chain will provide the competitive advantage in the uh, marketplaces. In the marketplaces, it will give some competitive advantage, right? So the IT plays a vital role in for decision making process, right? Then it has some beneficial cooperation and the coordination within the supply chain will be gets, right? Then in this unit, right? In this unit, we are going to see about how the information technology will runs the supply chain management in an effective manner, and what are the software we have to focus for the supply chain characteristics, as well as the what are the IT tools will be used in a supply chain management, right? So where the supply chain management will be enabled with IT. So in that IT enabled supply chain management, so what are the IT tools we are going to use, right? So that character, what is its characteristics? So that term we are going to see in this particular unit, right? So the information technology in the supply chain, right? Then first we are going to see about just basic introduction about the information technology in the supply chain. Then we are going to see about the role of information technology in the supply chain, right? So for the every organization, every industries, right? So is struggling in order to survive in the today's market places, competitive world, right? So they have to struggle with survive in the world of marketing places, right? So the traditional supply chain working is not going to help the golden network designs, right? So the tradition, that's called the traditional supply chain, right? So the traditional supply chain working is not going to help an organization to cope up with the market demands and the customers. But if the IT will be involved in the supply chain management, so it will create the revolution, right? It will create the revolution and it will changes the face of the supply chain, so which was used in the last few years back, right? So nowadays the IT is a very important one, right? So you may see how the IT will be works in a supply chain, right? So for example, the barcodes, right? So what's a barcode? So wherever you go, so wherever whatever may be the product, right? Just they scan and they can get details about that particular product, right? Then the barcode is a electronic one, right? So it will have some numbers in a digital format, right? So they will scan and that barcode will be a trackable one, right? So the information about the product will be goes in a worldwide, right? So the information it provides the organization to have a smart and the robust supply chain designs, right? So it will have some smart work as well as the fast in a supply chain network, right? So the challenges lies in creating the economic value through the vibrational of the organization, then the innovations, then application strategy, then the tools, right? So what are the tools will be used for the IT in the supply chain, right? So for the Indian supply chain industries, right? So for the Indian supply chain industry still in under development of the information technology which is used in the supply chain management, right? So the information technology plays a vital role in the enhancing of the supply chain drivers performance, right? So you already know the drivers. What are the drivers are there in the supply chain? Anyone anyone what are the drivers are there in the supply chain, right? So for the first unit itself, we discussed about the drivers, right? What are the supply chain drivers will be there and how it will be works, right? So that time we are we studied in a we learned in a first unit itself, right? So supply chain drivers, right? So the information technology is an important driver, right? It's important driver in the supply chain network, right? So it will enhancing the supply chain drivers performance, right? So not only information technology, so it will enhance the inventory management, it will enhance the transportation management, it will enhance the design of the networks, right? So it will be the integral part of the supply chain stages, right? The supply chain channels, right? It is the integrated part of the supply chain channel, supply chain stages, right? That you have to remember, right? Then the information sharing or a processing across the organizational boundary is a very important one, right? So there is an increase in needing of the fulfilling the information passing through the among the each stages is a very important one, right? So the information is an integral part of the supply chain management solutions, right? So which is incorporate the all the functionalities of the network strategies, then the configuration of the supply chain, then planning of the demand, then the transportation management, the inventory management, the warehouse management systems. So any of the organization will have this type of managements, right? So the information technology will incorporate with all these functional terms, right? For example, if the information lagging will be there, so what are the terms will be affected? So most probably the lack of coordination will be affects. So due to the lack of coordination, what will happen? The demand will be fluctuates. So the bullwheel effect will be occurs, right? So due to the bullwheel effect, what will happen? The profitability of the entire chain will be loses, right? So we have to reduce that type of the indirect costing on the particular product, right? So if the indirect costing will be increases, automatically what will happen? The product profitability will be reduces. So we have to reduce the cost which will affect the supply chain network, right? So what is that is our first role in a supply chain management, right? So here you have to see we have to reduce the cost of the particular product, or we have to reduce the cost, right? So that is the first term in our supply chain, right? So the information technology which is incorporated with all the supply chain network functionality terms, right? So what are the stages are there, then what are the functional will be there in the supply chain network, right? So what are the managements are involved, what are the management, the warehouse management, the inventory management, right? So the transportation management, so all will be incorporated in the supply chain network, right? Supply chain coordination, right? So there we have to reduce the cost, right? So how we can reduce the cost, right? How the information will be passing among the these stages, right? So how the functionality will be there, right? So due to that the cost has to be reduced, right? So then only we can improve our profitability, right? So it is possible only when the information technology is good, then only we can achieve this term, right? So it is the role of the IT in the supply chain network, right? Then the supply chain management, the management of the network is interconnected the business involved in the ultimate provision of the product and the service packages required by the end customer. So what are maybe the customer's demand, so the customer's demand that will be passing through the retailer, then it will be passing through the warehouses, distributors, manufacturers, and the suppliers, right? So the business, right, the business will be involved the each stages, right? Each stage will be involved in a business terms. So the supply chain network which is interconnected the business involved in each stages as the product wise as well as the service wise, right? So the end beneficial term will be the end customers, right? So either the product or a service has to pass between the stages, right? So there is a business will be involved in the every stages, right? So it is the basic structure of the supply chain management, right? So the supply consists of the flow of goods, then the informations, funds, so all will be passing between the stages, right? So here the information also passing, right? So in the unit of 3 we studied in a distribution channels, right? So how the distribution will be occurs, then what are the network design will be there, right? So there we have seen one type of the distribution model, right? So that type will be the customer will placing an order through the retailer, and the retailer will pass the information to the manufacturer, then the manufacturer produce the product, and they will directly ship to the customers in a direct manner, right? So that's the one type of design. There you can see the product flow will be there between the suppliers and the customers, but the information, how the information will be passing, right? So the information will be gathered by the retailer, and the retailer will pass the information to the manufacturer or a distributor, right? So the distributor will gives the order to the manufacturer, right? So how the information will be passing, then how the goods will be flowing, right? So the supply chain management, right? So the supply chain management will consist of the flowing of the goods, right? So how the product will be delivered to the customer, the flowing of the goods, as well as at the same time how the information will be passing from the customers to the manufacturer, or a manufacturer to the customer, right? So then the fund transfers, right? How the fund will be transfers, right? So either we have to give the funds directly to the manufacturer, or we have to give some the intermediators in the supply chain, right? Then how the fund will be transfers, right? So that are there in the um, supply chain network, right? So there we have to achieve the objective. The main objective of the supply chain is to enhance the supply chain profitability, right? We have to enhance the supply chain profitability, and how it will be the profitability will be increases. How the profitability will be good means without IT we can't achieve the term, Without the information technology, we can't achieve the profitability in the supply chain, right? So the IT is a very crucial role, right, in the supply chain. So the decision phases will be there in the IT, right? So the decision phases, right, which can be categorized as a designing, planning, then the operational. So which is depends on the time frame of the decision making, right? So time frame of the supply chain decision making. So here the supply chain execution is a managing and the coordination between the movement of the information or the movement of the funds or movement of the materials or a goods, right? So across the supply chain, right? So the flow is a bidirectional one, right? So if the material flow will be the bidirectional one, right, it consists of the information, right? So the management of the inventory of the flow of the caches or a goods, right? So it will be a very important one, right? So depending upon the role, right? So here you can see the first one is the cost reduction. Then we have to improve the productivity, right? So that is the role of the information technology in the supply chain, right? So how we can increase the productivity? What is the productivity, right? So the growth of the information technology has improved the productivity because the inventions of the new tools or the softwares, right? So that makes the product which is much much easier or less time consuming. Why? Because if you are going to see um, in a supermarket how they are billing the products, right? Just they scan the barcode and the barcode has to be incorporated with the systems and the system will have all the details about that barcodes, right? So in a supermarket you are going to buy an soap, right? So what they will do, they will scan only the barcode, they will scan only the barcode. So it will be showing the details about the barcode on the product, right? So the productivity, right? So the IT tools and software will gives the details about the product. So it will helps to make the productivity is much easier and the less time consuming, right? So that is called the here the productivity. And so due to the cash reduction and due to the productivity, automatically what will happen, the improvement will be there, the improvement will be increases, right? The improvement will be there, right? So for that improvement, right? So what are the new strategies will be using, what are the new technologies will be using, right? So that improvement, right? So these three is the important term in the role of the supply chain management, right? The role of the supply chain management, right? So this is the basic about the supply chain management, right? Is it clear? So what is the IT, right? So what is the information technology in the supply chain management, right? So for the entire business, right, the entire business, so the supply chain, without the supply chain information we can't get the profitability of the supply chain network, right? So the supply chain network will consist of the intermediaries, right? Then the flow of goods, then there we have the plenty of the management system, right? So we have the transportation system, we have the inventory system, we have the facility system, right? Then we have the indoor delivery system, right? Then the service, right, the service oriented system, right? So if you are selling the product, not only a goods, right, so it's also a service, right? So both will be incorporated in the supply chain network, right? So product and the service. So the information technology will incorporate all the management functions, all the supply chain management functions. So what are the management functions? There is plenty of organization management will be there. So the warehouse management will be there, then the inventory management will be there, then the transportation management will be there. So all the terms, right? So all the terms, so the transportation management and the inventory storage management, right? Then the facility, right? So how the product will be taken care, the handling will be there, right? So the facilities, right? How the laboring will be there in the supply chain network, right? So all will be incorporated with the information technology in the supply chain management, right? So not only in the terms of the product, in the terms of the service also, right? Then the role of IT in a supply chain, right? So how the cost will be get reduces, right? So due to the advancement of the information technology, right? So there is no fluctuation on the demand, right? So there um, all the terms will be increases, right? All the supply chain intermediaries will get good accurate information, right? So due to this we have to get the good profitability, we can earn the good profitability, right? So at the same time we have to see the four more terms, right? So what is that means? Right, so the information must have follow some characteristics, right? So some follow some characteristics, right? So when we are using in a supply chain decision making, while making the decision we have to see some characteristics, right? So what is the characteristics? So the first characteristics will be the information must be accurate. The information, right? Information must be an accurate one. That is our first characteristics, right? So the information must be the accurate one. Then the second characteristics is the information must be accessible in a timely manner. Accessible in the timely manner, right? So timely manner. So how we can access the information in a correct timing? Then the third one, right? So the information must be in the right kind of action. So the kind of action, right? So these three characteristics is a very important one while making the decision of the supply chain network, right? Decision of the supply chain network, these three we have to see, right? So generally what is the objective of the supply chain? What is the objective of the supply chain? We have to, here the supply chain network will have four objectives, right? So we have to deliver a product, right? In a correct product we have to deliver, right? Correct product we have to manufacture, then the correct product has to deliver, sorry, correct product has to deliver, right? To whom we have to deliver? In a correct person. In a correct person we have to deliver the product. Then when we have to deliver the product? In a correct time, right? So these four are the objective of any supply chain network, right? So we have to give the product, we have to supply the product, correct product we have to supply. Then where we have to supply, we have to deliver the correct product to the correct person to the correct time, right? So it is our objective of the supply chain network, right? So these four will be incorporated with the three characteristics. So the correct information, the accurate information that has to pass. Then the timely manner, how the information will be accessing in a timely manner, right? Then what kind of actions, right? So what kind of information must be reaches to the other stages, right? So these three are the main characteristics of the information, right, while making the decision in the supply chain network, right? So first we can say the information must be an accurate one, right? So why we have to give the accurate one, right? So due to the information distortion, the fluctuation will be increases, the demand will be goes in a wrong way, right? So there we have the lack of coordination in the supply chain, right? So due to that the profitability will be reduces, right? So it is the main characteristics, right? So the information accuracy is a main characteristics, right? So without the information that gives the true picture of the supply chain, right, true picture in the supply chain stages, so it is a very difficult to make the good decisions, right? So without the correct information we can't take a decision, right? So it's a very important one, right? So it says that all the information must be the 100% correct information has to reach between all the stages, right? So the data available in the picture of the demand, right? So the data available in the picture of the demand, at least right. So due to the information distortion, we may get the lack of coordination in the supply chain network. So due to that, we can surely the profitability will be reduces. So the information must be the accurate one in the supply chain. That is our first decision, right? That is our first characteristics in the decision making, right? So first we have to ensure whether the data passing will be correct or not, the information passing will be correct or not, right? So that we have to analyze, right? So by the forecasting method or the customer demand method, right? Then the information must be accessible in a timely manner, right? So often the accurate information exists by the time it is available, right? The accurate information exists, but by the time it is available, it is either out of the date or it is in a current, right? So it is not accessible form. So that is will not help the customers or will not help the supply chain management to run in a profitable manner, right? So make the good decision, the managers need to have the update the information uh, when it is available, when it is accessible. There also we have to update the information, right? So the timely manner will be a very important one, right? So for example, if you are going to buy a product in a Flipkart, right? So there they may have some offers, right? So the timely offer, right? So when the offer will be there, right? So they have to update, they have to update in a good manner, right? So then only we can get the product in a we can accessible that product in a good manner, right? So the timely update, the timely manner accessible is a very important one in the form of the information, right? Then the information must be a right kind of decision, right? So the decision making needs the information that they can use, right? So often the companies have the large amount of the data, right? But it is not helpful to make the decisions, right? So without having the lot data, sorry, the company will have a lot of data, but we have to use the data in a correct manner. So the kind of action will be a very good one, right? So because of that correct data collections will be helps to update the information in the timely manner, and it helps to give the information accurate, right? So the information accuracy has to pass among the supply chain networks, right? So these three are the important terms while making the decisions in the supply chain in the terms of the information technology, right? So these three you have to remember, right? So then uh, then how we can apply the IP in a supply chain network, right? So we have the plenty of enabled devices will be there, right? So the how the information and the enabling technologies will be there in the supply chain management, right? So how the information technology it can be adopted, it can be applied in a supply chain management, right? So how the information tools it will be enabled in a supply chain management, right? So the information affects the every part of the supply chain, the information affects the every part of the supply chain. The information serves as a connection between the various stages in the supply chain, right? So it will allowing them to coordinate and maximize the supply chain profitability, right? Then the information is also the important for the day-to-day life operations, right? So it becomes the more responsive and more effectiveness in the terms of the information passing among the supply chain networks, right? So it is an important driver to run the supply chain management, right? So how the information technology will be enabled in a supply chain network, right? So the factors, right? So this we have three factors. So depending upon the three factors, we have to enable the supply chain we have to enable the information technology in a supply chain management, right? So first one is the customer expectation have to be fulfilled. We have to satisfy the customer, right? That is the first factor. Then we have to reduce the human sources, right? We have to reduce the human source requirements, and we have to reduce the inventory, and we have to reduce the cost in a competitive level, right? So that is the second term. That is one more factor. And the third factor is important one, the information. It's an important strategy planning to deployment of the resources, right? So here you can see we are using many technologies, right? We are using the many technologies, right? So due to these technologies, we have to increase our profitability in a supply chain network, and we have to pass the information, or we have to manage the information in the terms of the IT, right? So the first one is the electronic, right? So you may know what is that EDI. What is that? The electronic data interchange, right? Electronic data interchange, and that is the electronic commerce, right? Then the barcode and the scanners, right? Barcode and scanners, and we have to use some software, right? We have to use some softwares in the management system, either it's in the warehouse management system, inventory management system, right? So in a particular supply chain network, we have plenty of management system, right? So how the management data will be gathered, how it will be accessed, right? So that data system, right? Then that data system will be gives into the competitive world to access in a whole supply chain network by using the resource planning, the enterprises resource planning, right? So from the next class itself, we are going to see about how this IT tools will help to improve the supply chain networks, right? So next class we are going to see about the electronic data interchange, then the value of that particular electronic data interchange, and we have to see how the barcoding will be helps to improve the supply chain network. Then what is the different type of managements will be using in our particular organizational, then how it will be enabled with the all stages for the resource enter by the planning one, right? So how the resources will be planning, right? So we are going to see about these tools, right? How the IT terms will be enabled in a supply chain management, that we can see in the next class. So up to this class, just we are discuss only the introduction about the information technology in the supply chain management, and what is the role in a supply chain management, what is the role of the information technology in a supply chain management, right? So up to this we have seen up to these two topics, right? So what is the introduction, right? So how the introduction will be there, right? So the introduction and how the role of IT will be there in a supply chain, right? So these two we are seeing here, right? Up to this, do you have any doubt? Up to this, do you have any doubt? Just it's a preliminary term, right? So what is the role of IT? Then what is the role of IT, and how the information will be affects the supply chain profitability? Do you have any doubt in this class? Anyone? Anyone? No. Right. So it's a very basic terms just we discussed. Right. So next class onwards, Sivasanam sir will take care about the fifth unit, first half of the fifth unit, and the second half will be given as the seminar topics. Right. It's a very simple unit. Right. So we are giving as a seminar, but no one is willing to take the seminar. Right. So no one is filled in seminar topics in your assignment. Why?